Hey guys, Lynn Marie here, your quitting evangelist, and I'm coming to you with this week's slightly different quit of the week. Now, you know I'm always taking requests, and so somebody sent me a request on Instagram for me to discuss what to do when you know you have to quit something, but you're paralyzed or frozen about the next step. And this is a great question. Thank you very much to my dear friend for sending me this. Since it may be job related, I'm going to go ahead and keep her anonymous. She didn't say whether or not I could say her name, but I love you very much for sending me this. But again, thank you so much for anybody who has a quit of the week they'd like to chime in with. But today we're going to talk about what to do when you know you have to quit something and you feel paralyzed or frozen about the next step. So this is a great chance for you to evaluate what is making you feel frozen. Is it fear? Because most of the time, if somebody describes something as paralyzed or frozen, that is generally followed by the phrase, by fear. I am paralyzed by fear. I was frozen in fear, right? So if you know you need to quit something, then take a look at what is the fear that is making you feel like you are paralyzed or frozen. And I'm going to give you a few examples of what those fears may be to get you started thinking. But if it's a job, and sometimes also if it's a relationship or maybe even a city that you need to quit, your fear may be what people will think of your quit. Especially if you've got a really nice, secure, or prestigious job that other people think may be a dream job, then it may be hard for them to imagine why you would want to quit it. And so you're thinking, gosh, I'm paralyzed by the fear of what people are going to think of my quit. So let's say that's fear number one. We'll deal with these one by one. Number one, if that's your fear, then I invite you to think about the two following things. Number one, if we're talking a job where you have to be there 40 weeks, or a relationship where you have to be in it all the time, or a city where you have to live in it all the time, that is your entire experience, your entire existence, right? Whomever may be thinking about that, whoever you think is like, okay, I'm afraid of what so-and-so, my parents or my friends or random people on Facebook are going to think about my quit, realize that whatever they think about it, whatever they think about it, they're going to think about for a few seconds, maybe a minute, as they're scrolling through their feed if they happen to see it on social media, or if you call your parents may think about it more than average, let's be honest, but your friends, you call them, you tell them, they may be surprised, but they may well be happy for you. They may not be dismayed. This fear in your head, we tend to fear these negative things when we have no idea. They can actually be thinking, wow, that's a really courageous move for them to leave that really cushy job. I'm really proud of them. They must have some passion that they're going to go follow. That's amazing. We tend to just assume the worst, but how about we take a chance and assume the best and assume that they're not going to say anything or think anything bad about it, but whether or not they do, whatever that small amount of time that they think about it is so trivial compared to the life worth of it that you have to live. You have to be in it 40 hours a week or all the time, depending on which situation it is. They have thought about it for 20, 30 seconds, maybe. And they've never been in your shoes. They never have been in your past. They'll never be in your future. They can only guess what it's like to be you, but they're still seeing it through the filter and the lens of who they are and their own upbringing and their own experience. So how would they know what's best for you, when they're making these judgments? So whatever they think, if they do think something negative, realize that that's just because of their own story and their own experience, and it has nothing to do with your experience. And whether or not you should feel some kind of guilt or shame for wanting to leave this thing that isn't working for you. They're not you. And so please don't feel any guilt or shame about what they think about your quit. And as Jason Goldberg, who's on the podcast this week, if you are listening to this on the podcast episode that will air in the future, this is episode 49 I'm talking about. Jason Goldberg is on, and he says that parents who make this kind of like, oh, but you have this good job, they tend to either be protecting or projecting, neither of which is your concern. And I loved when he said that because it's very true. Because often when parents, like from my generation, my parents' generation, if they're giving us career advice or telling us what they think about our career choices, it's through the lens that they were brought up with, that like getting a bank job and having it for 40 years is some, badge of honor. And so you can get that watch at the end. And that's not how today's world is. And so they can only see through the lens of what they were brought up, unless they, choose to see through another lens. But that's why they're either protecting, thinking based on their old values, the values that they grew up with, no judgment on whether or not they're good or bad, but those are their values. So they're protecting you, so they think, and that's not relevant to you because you live in your own current reality with your own current values, or they're projecting onto you. Maybe they, and this is parents or others, maybe they have a risk tolerance that is much lower than yours, and they would never take that leap, but they're not you. So what either, like Jason said, projecting or protecting, neither one of those are your problem. And the other thing to think about in that scenario is the fact that there's this, I think it's a weight but why graphic, and I talk about it all the time. And it says the top of one square is like what people think is happening. And it's a stick figure in the middle, and all these other stick figures are staring at him. And that's what the stick figure in the middle thinks. And then the next graphic says what is actually happening. And there's a stick figure in the center, and then everybody else is on their phones, which is sad but true. Whatever they think about your quit, unless they are your immediate family, they're probably just going to keep scrolling, and they're going to be on to their next thought in 2 minutes. So even if they think the worst thing possible about your quit, they will think about it for such a short period of time, and they're going to go back to their own lives. So that is not a great reason for you to keep doing what you're doing out of fear that they may think something negative about it. So in case that's the fear that's keeping you paralyzed, those are some good things to think about to hopefully get you out of that fear. Another fear may be about time or money that you have quote unquote wasted if you have invested a lot of time in something. And I invite you to either listen to my old quit of the week on the sunk cost fallacy, or to think about it in this way. If you have spent, like I have, $250,000 and a decade in education to get to a career, that isn't something that you spent. That is an investment. Because what I was trying to do when I spent that money, or when I invested that money, was get a career I thought would make me happy. I was a multimedia designer. I was not happy. I thought medicine would make me happy. So I invested all of that time and money into what I thought would make me happier. That means that if at the end of that investment, I'm not happy, I don't stick with it just because I invested that time or money. What I do instead is continue to try to make myself happy. That was always supposed to be the end goal. It may be that the investment continues to grow. I may have to spend a little more time and a little more money like I did on law school, and keep growing and keep exploring and finding new things. But if you see it as an investment with an end point of happiness, then it doesn't have to be like, oh, I tried this one thing, I spent a bunch of money trying it, and I better stick with it because I spent that money on the thing. You spent that money on you. You invested that money in you and your happiness. And you owe it to yourself to keep searching until you find that happiness. Now, one of the third things that you may be concerned about are logistical issues, finances, what might help into your health or to your relationships if you make a quit. And those are all fantastic things that you would actually want to plan beforehand. But if you're paralyzed or frozen with fear, very often those fears come in the first variety, which is more of the esoteric, what are people going to think? What if I've wasted time or money fears? And those are, now I don't want to say that those fears are easily overcome, but they are definitely manageable when you look at the facts. And I'm hoping that today I was able to show you some of the logic that I use to unravel those fears. All right. I love when you guys send me your requests, so please continue to send me your requests. I already have a request for next week. I'm just going to give you a spoiler alert. It is quitting the holidays, and I cannot wait to talk about that. It may or may not be what you think, but still, it's going to be a great conversation. Hopefully with me and you guys in the comments. But anyway, until next week, please keep your Quit of the Week requests coming. And also you can request people for Quit Happens. I love that as well. Check out Quitting by Design, the book, if you haven't already. And I have a coaching online course coming up in January. So stay tuned for that if you have a New Year's resolution that may involve a quit. All right. Until next time, everyone, happy quitting. And bye, Mir.